Good morning and good afternoon, friends. Hey, we did it. We made it to another FSMA Friday, and I'm very excited to share it with you. If you are new to our FSMA Friday series, I welcome you. My name is Jim Albright. I'm from SafetyChain, and SafetyChain is the sponsor of today's webinar. And this is the place for all you food and beverage facility operators, QA, safety, and compliance folks to learn about emerging changes within the Food Safety Modernization Act, and of course, best practices to meet compliance. As always, we're honored to have with us food safety and quality experts from the Atchison Group. But before I introduce today's speaker, I need to tick off a few housekeeping items. Ready? All right. First, you may have noticed that all attendee mics are muted, but don't be shy. We're leaving room at the end of the presentation for Q&A, so please send us your comments and questions using the questions panel. Second, we are recording this presentation, so everyone here will be sent not only the replay link, but a copy of the slides later today. All right, let's meet our presenter. I'm very excited to welcome back to FSMA Friday, Ranjit Clare. She's the Food Safety Director at the Atchison Group, who some of you actually may have heard on a previous FSMA Friday where Ranjit was talking about ways to optimize your CAPA program. And as you can see here, Ranjit has a ton of experience in food safety, quality, and compliance. And this is pretty cool. She even holds master's degrees in food science and international food law. So Ranjit's going to give us a great lesson today, as many of us might have unknowingly interchanged the validation and verification definitions or processes, which could lead to some compliance issues. So thanks, Ranjit, for coming back to FSMA Friday and giving us some great pointers. Happy to have you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me. It is always a pleasure to come back and talk about what we do on the day-to-day and share some practical knowledge as well as industry best practices.
Great, great. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
All right, let's hit it.
All right. Thank you. So hi, everyone. This is Ranjit Clare, and this FSMA Friday is a great platform to talk about updates about what is going on with FDA and Food Safety Modernization Act related new activities since FSMA has been launched many years ago, and we still have updates coming. So one of the update in July, which happened that the US FDA finalized the guidance document for hazard analysis and risk-based preventive controls for food for animals as a part of FSMA. So what will this guidance document will give the industry is an overview guidance of how to do the biological, physical, chemical, radiological hazard analysis for animal food, as well as what are the key tricks to do talk about food safety plan and any other requirements of the preventive controls around animal food. So I would encourage you who are dealing with animal food indirectly or directly to actually refer and go and visit this guidance document. Okay, so this was the first ritual of our FSMA Friday to talk about the updates from FDA, and now we will dive down into the topic, which is validation and verification. So as Jim briefly mentioned that we were talking about something that is already industry known terminology, validation and verification. What I am taking an opportunity is to take 21 CFR reference for the definition. So we will take the definitions from the regulation as well as we will see how it gets applied at the production level, at the practical level in food manufacturing. So verification is defined in 21 CFR 117.3 that it's an application of methods, procedures, tests, and other evaluations in addition to monitoring to determine whether a control measure or combination of control measures is or has been operating as intended and to establish the validity of the food safety plan. So this is definition, and we have a lot to discover under these lines and how it applies to our production floor in the manufacturing standard where we will need to use verification processes. And in the same part, 21 CFR 117.3, the validation is defined as obtaining and evaluating scientific and technical evidence that a control measure, combination of control measures or a food safety plan as a whole, when properly implemented, is capable of effectively controlling the identified hazard. Ooh. So this was a part of the law where we want to follow and abide by the FSMA definitions. Now we need to dive into more at the practical level. So Jim, let's do a poll on this one.
Ah, sounds good. All right. This one's pretty fun. Let's see how we do. You all should see that up now. We're getting tons of votes coming in. Check this out. All right. About 50% of all those in attendance are voting. I'm seeing a trend. All right, we'll give it just another second and we'll close out. Here we go. So it looks like validation.
Wow, great. 63% panelists said validation comes first, and the 37% says verification. Not bad.
Not
So,
bad.
yes, and that's why we want to know what comes first, chicken or egg. So we will find more about it as we go by for further slides. Validation is something that has been defined by the FDA and also by the GFSI guidance document for food safety. The reason we wanted to put both on side by side, because whoever has to follow the Food and Drug Administration registration licensing, they are also required to have GFSI by their customers. So validation in terms of FDA, what they want is that they expect a process of demonstrating that the HACCP system as designed can adequately control identified hazard to produce a safe food. So I have taken this definition only from the HACCP system of FDA, where they are giving the guidance on that. Similar definitions are there in the other parts of FDA 21 CFR as well. So how the Global Food Safety Initiative, GFSI, sees that as an action to identify and correct a problem that occurred during the production of food without other actions associated with the corrective action procedure, such as actions to reduce the likelihood that the problem will reoccur, evaluate all affected food for safety, prevent affected food from entering the commerce. So GFSI has a whole overarching every single step of the food flow. And this is where the expectation is that there has to be defined actions to know that where they need to set up a control, and those control has to be done right to produce safe food. So if we go to next slide. So there are two elements of validation as per USDA. So now I started looking into how the validation is seen in the eyes of USDA and FDA and CFIA, since we are in North America. Mostly all the jurisdictions requiring the validation to be looked into along the same lines. One of the first element of validation is that there should be a scientific, technical justification already should be there in the system so that we can refer to. It can consist of a series of historic research, technical documentation done by the experts, the panels, the food safety expert, the academics, and anywhere where the food was looked critically for the safety aspect. So one of the example of the historic scientific research-based technical justification is that the FDA has some guidance documents. One of the example I wanted to give here is Fish and Fishery Guidance Document, which has it's a very extensive, about 400 plus pages of the guidance document. Within that, there is some of the tables given, like based on what is the product, what kind of pathogen can affect this product, and what you will do in terms of cooking of this product to have this pathogen, risk of pathogen reduced or minimized or stopped at a certain minimum maximum temperature. So validation studies are always very, very beneficial if we know where to find scientific and technical information that can be our starting point guide to determine our internal processes based on what else we need to do in addition to getting the historic data. So if we look into the second element, let me go to the next slide. The second element is that initial practical demonstration. So let's say we know now the fish has to be cooked at, as per guidance document, let's say like 70 degrees Celsius. So what we need is we need to make sure that we have at the practical level, when you actually produce or cook the fish inside the production area with your given cooker, with the given oven, the heating equipment there is a practical demonstration of the system which is used to have this validated values to be achieved. So that consists of the plan of operations, your HACCP plan, and it will require several series of tests, which will give you an idea that can your equipment is capable to meet the requirements of set temperature, set controls in place in terms of production. So that is the second element of validation. So in terms of I want to continue talk about validation because we need to do validation right in order to do an effective verification. So if we get to the next slide. In terms of validation of HACCP, again, we are referring to the CFR 417.4. This is more on the original historic how to do the HACCP plan validation and how the initial validation of the hazard analysis and development required certain number of steps to determine the adequate critical control points, adequate monitoring systems, and record keeping. So validation is the key for a successful HACCP program to control the risk to a minimal level. Oops. Next slide. So when we require to have the validation, so validation is required or expected to do before you start production. So for example, we are going to open a facility where we will be cooking chicken. Now, the facility requires proper prerequisites, HACCP plan, design of the operations, product flow, employee flow, process flow, as well as the equipment commissioning of equipment setting and equipment calibration. As the part of that, the new establishments, they are expected to do a lot of stuff before as they open, and the initial validation should be within 90 days under a conditional grant of inspection. So this is something that is expected. 90 days is a reasonable time when validated values are set for anything we do want to monitor on ongoing basis for food safety. Establishment be producing new products to complete validation of a new HACCP plan within 90 days. So is it 90 days or when there is any changes made? And it depends how quickly you can put the validated values, validated parameters for food safety. It can be earlier if this infrastructure, if the team is very competent enough to do those validated parameters set for the production. And this can be taken more time when you are introducing a very new equipment for some critical control points management, like we have a totally new equipment, like ovens are pretty new, high standard, something different than historically being used. There are certain technologies in the industry where you are doing the applications like freeze drying, you are doing applications like dried meat, fermentation of meats and products and fruits and vegetables. So there are so different kinds of equipment may come into picture which you will need to set up the food safety parameters in terms of critical control point. So then validation will take different approach. Along with your first element of validation should be considered, that is the historic, scientific, technical data available in the industry. So next question is, who should do validation? So validation in terms of, if you notice, I've been bringing some references of validation of HACCP, validation of CCPs, validation of equipment, and the goal is to understand validation well. So now I'm trying to bring the Food Safety Modernization Act preventive control for human and animal foods, how they see validation of preventive control. So let's say we made this preventive control of cooked chicken in an oven, and we wanted to make sure that the scientific, technical, background, historical data is there, and we are trying to use the actual physical equipment, which can be oven, to do the cooking of chicken. So who should be doing this? So the expectation is that it must be performed or overseen by a qualified individual, which we call as PCQI in the definition of FSMA, preventive control qualified individual, who can either perform or he can assist, but also must be overseen by somebody qualified who has the ability to interpret the industry-wide scientific technical information into the practical level of the production floor, and who has the ability to work with those equipment engineers, the staff who is actually being the operators for that particular activity going forward, to ensure that this particular equipment, which is meant to have a preventive control, is effectively tuned up, set up with the set criteria of the time, temperature. So the cooked chicken, if cooked in this particular oven, is cooked homogeneously all over in every corner of the chamber of the oven. So thinking about a validation is series of testing, series of worst case scenario situations created by thinking about cold spot in the oven. There may be some areas where the temperature is not properly going. So how we can make sure that validation, design of validation steps are thought out by a very qualified person who is aware of the possibilities of the wins and failures in the process of validation. Process validation. So once we have inside the production is going on, so the process is that now there has to be some opportunities where the validation can be happening in the process itself. There is a design of expectation of internal audits, inspections, how to handle food safety deviations, how the quality assurance tasks are carried out, how we determine that how many microbiological testing we need to do for a particular product in a year, in a month, in a quarter. What will trigger your other validation activities, like how often I should be looking into some other activities which may lead into reset of the requirements. So for example, customer complaints, consumer complaints can trigger some kind of findings which will need you to do testing more often than you were designing before. So process validation is also a very, very important part, and it is coming handy in conjunction with the equipment validation. Product validation is the another part, which is like a validation study, which is a one-time study that food safety risk managers complete in order to assure that a new method produces accurate results. So for example, that setting the cooking temperatures, setting the cooling temperatures, setting holding time, all those product related validation studies will allow the food safety preventive control risk manager, qualified individual, to determine what are my setting points to make the product safe. So how we will take the validation guidance, as I've been talking about the scientific literature, the historic data, so there can be government guidelines, as I shared with you. The fish and fishery product has a seafood has a guidance document which covers the scientific data showing product wise time, temperature, lethality check, kill step requirements. Also the safe limits of different criteria based on the studies and industry best practices and industry studies done. Published scientific literatures by some researchers on particular products. We should know where we can get those mathematical models, data from the previous experiments and data from new scientific experiments, and any combination of all of the above, which is handy. More information about product process validation coming from the similar industry, the same industry, the guidance, the peer review, the government guidance departments of like the regulatory bodies, as well as the university researchers. So these are all the very good approaches to follow for the validation. So validation, when we should to take the validation action is more determining that what are the activities so for validation. And now we will move the switch to gears towards verification. Verification is that we are actually ensuring that validated steps which were identified to produce safe food are actually confirmed, having proper monitoring system to make sure the product is meeting those validated values of safety. So the starting point for this is the parameters of validation, and it can change at certain situations when government changes, or sorry, the government parameter changes, or when industry starts looking into some additional risks which we need to address in terms of food safety. So verification is a monitoring step. It has to be taken with a written procedural approach, and there should be a proper steps taken to implement the verification steps and the effectiveness check. Verification can be, I am doing the checking of cooked chicken every 30 minutes on the line while the cooked chicken is coming out of the oven. Now how many pieces of chicken? What is the belt speed that's coming through the oven? How many times, which area of the belt you are taking the pieces of chicken? What kind of equipment you're using? Are you using the probe, handheld probe, or there's some built-in probe in the system? Like what are the tools used to do the verification checks? How often? By who? What if the temperature is not finding right? Until when you want to go back and try to hold the product? So verification requires steps, the procedures, implementation steps, the tools, and also effectiveness check. And you should know, we all should know, if the product is not coming out right and your verification is able to catch it, this is a good indication that verification plan is effective. And during the additional steps of verification is that to making sure there is a process monitoring instruments, as I mentioned about the temperature probes, there can be pH meters. So how can we verify that those equipments are suitable enough to actually give the results that we are expecting? There may be, in some situations, verification can be done by product testing in terms of product safety, and there are other verification activities of sanitation effectiveness by like environmental monitoring, checking the pathogens which mostly can be growing into the environment of production facility, and that is verification of sanitation. Then the record review of certain products, like various records of your daily, weekly, monthly CCP records for receiving, shipping. So verification is required for the document effectiveness too, because if someone is filling the record, he or she cannot verify his own work. So a PCQI is the right individual to actually assign, define, or design the verification activities around the record verification. So verification can be initial verification where there is limits are set. The verification of the testing by sending some samples out and making sure verification that the validated values are giving the results of safe product in terms of microbiology, chemical, biological, physical hazards, and also to ensure that we have the right tools, right probes, right meters to check those, and the documentation is right. So verification of document is more about document control, making sure the CCP record, for example, are the most important record of the HACCP, because based on that is the entire hazard analysis critical control point is giving the good results or expected results of the product safety. So initial verification is a part of kind of a combination of the slightly with the validation as well. So validation set the value, but verification is, do we have everything set up right? So now we are about to take off to the ongoing verification. So ongoing verification is where we want to make sure consistently at a certain frequency if the limits are met, if the records we designed are giving the compliance and we are able to do a trend analysis out of that. Do we have a deviation corrective action plan in case things do not go right as we planned in terms of the CCP monitoring, in terms of cooking, controlling, holding? What will be our correction and corrective action? Has the process, equipment, or type of product, is there any change happened? So there should be change in, there can be change in the equipment, there can be change in the operability. So how can we make sure that these particular, the tools associated to the product safety are verified on a certain interval? Last but not the least is employees. If employees are fully trained, knowledgeable to do what to do, they are trained to do the verification activities. They're trained to actually call someone if they do not find that the product is meeting the safety requirements of cooking, controlling, holding, storing, what they were expected to do. So ongoing verification is a key for a success of the food safety. Somebody has to define the implementation process, the frequency of testing, frequency of checks, what if scenarios, if something don't go right as planned, then if the operator has ability to hold the product, there is a quality assurance department kicked in. So really ongoing verification is actually a task which is going into so many different with different individuals. So employees who are doing the verification must be trained and knowledgeable about it. So how do we get the verification designed? So we now set a machine which will cook the chicken, and now we know what temperature we want. We got FDA, CFIA, USDA requirements already considered. Now we wanted to actually run the verification of those. So we need to understand and learn about what are the tools are involved in verification activities. So equipment manufacturers, they can be the best one to actually share the information about the settings of the oven. They can be helping for information about the tune-ups, information about failures and changing of the different parts when you need. Then chemical providers can tell us what is the verification steps, what parts per million of sanitizer you need to use. Just an example. Same thing, testing laboratories and statistical sampling processes and internal audits. Verification activities can be actually reviewed with the internal audits and see whether your verification activities are working as per expected requirements. And requirements are food safety requirements, regulatory requirements, legislative requirements, and customer requirements. One of the other tools to make sure to confirm or to utilize to know whether verification is working is not is the internal audit. It's like internally you are designing a program to check every step which is required to be verified and review whether the steps are in good working order to meet the requirement. It's a valuable tool for effectively ensuring compliance and managing risk. It also helps the system or process to confirm that it is working as intended. So, so the internal audit can be designed for the steps to make sure that we have the continuous improvement opportunities. If there is any, we will find with that, or validation of food safety system. Internal audit, a good qualified internal auditor can be PCQI, who cannot do his own internal audits, but there are several others can be trained who can do the risk-based scheduling of the different steps of food safety plan, processes, CCP checks, SOP reviews, and then the duration and frequency can be based on the risk. Like you may want to do more of the critical control point audits in internal audit review than something that is less critical, which is away from the direct food handling. Ensure that auditors, whoever are doing this, are independent of their own work. So let's say if I am the one who's monitoring CCPs, I'm the verifying authority for that, I cannot do the review of the whole system of around verification because I will be doing my own review, which will be a conflict. So importance of documentation is very important, starting from validation to verification. So the reason why I decided to have this slide there, because whatever we do, starting from validation, which is a creation of a control limit, to verification to ensure we are doing it, there has to be a good documentation control. Somebody coming from regulator sides or outside customers, inspecting bodies, they should be able to see the clear picture of how did you arrive from validation to verification. And it could be direct observations. The record should be very easily connecting where you start, where you end, and how do you ensure effectively verification is happening. Say what you do what you say, and prove it. So in summary, I was kind of looking for what is the best way to describe this. And then I tried to find something, and this is to my knowledge, I found this is kind of a good visual on, like, validation is that when we start designing a roller coaster, you don't want to reel people on it until you are really sure that they will not have any accident if it doesn't work well. So that's a validation. Once you are fully sure that this roller coaster will not lead into any accident, it will go as we designed to go, it will control with the seat belts, with the movement, with the momentum, with the torque, whatever comes into the physics part of it. Then we will, only after that, we will start using this for the real people. So this is really the food safety is like, we value the risk, that we don't want a risk of the people to get sick. So the validation study starts with the scientific, historical, technical information around in the industry, see what was happening around this product in the past number of years, how we will come up with the right values from there, and then we will do mock run of our processes. And then once we are very sure with the product testing, with the cold spot testing, with some critical challenged testing done on the process and the product, then we will say, now we know what is my validation numbers and process control points are. Then I will start using it and continue verifying. One of the other simple language I want to show that without an effective validation process, verification will not work. So somebody thought of our equipment, but it will not give you the safety results as you can see in these pictures. Again, this is my thought, how can I visually explain to you that if the validation is not right, no matter how good is that equipment, it won't give you the results. So you can see the people just standing on the stairs and the plane is not there. So verification is not there. Maybe they're designed enough to make the stairs, right? Okay, this is another example. So verified is means like I made a house. This is a house, but validated means if this house is made right to be livable, it has everything that you need in order to make sure we get what we want in terms of the safety, the shelter, the airflow, the ventilation. So without validation, verification is not there. And this same applies to food safety too.
Oh, I love that. I really love those examples. Those are perfect. Yeah. Is this house made right to live? Ah, that's a good question. Ranjit, this was fantastic. I took a ton of notes here. Beautiful job. Um, we're obviously here at the Q&A. We've received several questions coming in throughout your presentation. I want to make sure that we get to them all. So let's hit the first one. Actually, I had a question for you. Since I'm fairly new to this, what process is mostly done during the daily production? Is it verification or validation?
So are you, is this for me? Sorry, Jim.
Yes.
Okay,
In,
okay,
in
sorry.
your experience, what is the process, verification or validation, that is mostly done each day?
Yes, so I would say based on the practical level of food industry is that verification, because validation is the design of the control point, which we don't do every day, but it can happen when there is a new thing started, new equipment, new product, new process, or a change, or something really happened, like a recall happened, and we have to revisit the validation process. However, the verification is like, let me give example of, again, simple example, is like cooking chicken in a conveyor belt coming through the oven. I want to do cook chicken temperature every 30 minutes, so I don't miss any the cold spot or undercooked chicken leaving. So verification goes most of the time during the production.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no, that makes sense. I'm just also curious, what are the typical roadblocks for each of the process? We'll just start with the verification, because I know you mentioned there are the right tools. That's something you brought up on one of the slides. So what if you don't have the right tools? Are there standardized tools that you should be using? Or you also talked about skilled labor. Um, what happens when you don't actually have somebody who's qualified or trained to meet that 90-day production requirement to meet compliance?
Yeah, so I think the tool itself is like, again, every equipment is different. I have one oven in factory A, another oven in factory B. Even if they are across the street, they both have to be going through the individual validations. The controls are determining based on what really you want to achieve with these ovens. We want to make the product temperature reached at right temperature and right holding time in that particular chamber of oven. So the tools are always mostly depends what we were trying to do. For example, if we are trying to find the product is cooked at safe temperature, the thermometer is the best tool. If we are trying to find that our cleaning surface is giving no microorganisms left behind after I clean and sanitize, then sanitizer concentration is the key. Like what concentration ppm, parts per million, you need to clean and sanitize so there is no microorganism which can be harmful around food contact surface. So there are variable tools based on what really we want to achieve. And back to my point of the across the street, two factories having same ovens, same kind of ovens, does not make that we will copy and paste the validation of the factory A to B in terms of process validation. But we can always refer industry historic data and scientific research data to consider. But when it comes to practical level, it has to be variable. It has to be particular based on process, based on the facility, based on the people. And the second point about people training is very, very important. Mostly the validation fails when we don't have a competent people doing this. That's why industry is pretty open to actually use the experts. So there are so good food safety experts in different specialized places. Like in TAG, we have expert for facility hygiene design. We have expert for supply chain, expert for pasteurization product. So really it depends. So validation is kept open in a way that there is no restriction that you have to do only with your constricted small team. There are the teams, individuals, industry resources, research papers, so much information to use so that your team who is actually overseeing the validation activities is fully equipped with the tools, the resources. So we do the validation right from the get-go.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is somebody actually made a comment here. Nunes said the poll question was interesting because even though validation seems to come first, the verification will also show if the validation is still accurate. Exactly. So that's a good one. Alan asked the question, how often should validation take place?
So it's a very good question, Alan, because validation is at the beginning of the process. Then you will have a risk assessment of the process and at what time the process has changed. Any criteria used in the process has changed, the equipment change, the product sourcing change, and I'm just trying to think more and something more about that when there is a company-wide a big food safety issue happened, the recall happened, and big impact on the industry on certain similar product is happening, then you should do the validation. So validation is done in so many different moving parts. It starts from the beginning to ongoing, and it was fairly right statement that it is ongoing, but not as often as verification.
Right. So Jill wants to know, does verification include monitoring? What's the difference between verification and monitoring?
So verification and monitoring. So monitoring steps are once you design your validation step, you know now what target critical point or critical control point we want to achieve for a process. And now we have to define that in a running process, how often we need to do the monitoring. So the monitoring is a step which to ensure your validated values are consistently applied throughout the time cycle of the process.
Hmm.
And verification can be in the two folds here. So for example, now I will give example of metal detector. Metal detector is monitoring that there is no metal going through, missed metal going with the product when you are passing. That's a monitoring. So the verification that your metal detector is working, you will do once every 2 hours with the testing wand. You will try to run with it to make sure, really sure that the package of the food with the testing wand on top is rejected. So monitoring means continuously it's going through and you are recording in a certain way. Verification is that you can do the equipment verification, you can do process verification. That is like additional check so that the monitoring system is actually effectively giving the results throughout the process.
Right. Actually, you brought up the metal detector. Angela wants to know, what is an effective way to validate a metal detector as a CCP?
Wow, that's my favorite topic. We can have another webinar for that. Yeah. So effective way to verify metal detector is, first of all, the metal detector has to be set right. In many cases, based on my experience in industries, if your product consistency, the density, the height of the package is changing, you will get the variable sensitivity of the metal detector. If the speed of the belt is changing, you will get the different sensitivity. Sometimes metal detector will not reject. So first of all, Angela, one thing is you have to done the metal detector setting right. And that's where your metal detector manufacturers comes in handy. They are expected to have a technical people doing that service for them. And the second point is for the companies who actually has to verify this is mostly to the representable sample. Like let's say we have a clamshell with the 6 muffins inside. Again, I'm just giving example based on what I have kind of observed that this can be the best way to do it is this particular 6 pack muffins will have kind of some size of the clamshell, but we need to make sure it's representing the sensitivity of the testing one you're putting is putting in the some center, some representable place where most of the activity can be caught. And some companies, again, this is not kind of very known practice, but some companies, they actually do find their customer complaints related foreign material, and they wanted to use that as a reference. They're saying, did it not pass through my metal detector on the day when we were making this product? So something you can keep as a reference too. So there is so many different ways to do metal detector verification. And I know everyone has this challenge because we rely on the manufacturer of metal detector, but also we do need to look a little bit more on a realistic level. Where is the metals coming from? Why still I have a metal going to customer through this, even if I'm passing through metal detector? So there are so many ways to do the verification. And we can talk
Right.
about this all day. I know it's a different, we can like, yeah, it can be discussed further.
What are your thoughts about X-rays? Sue was asking about X-rays.
Yeah, an X-ray itself is a modern technology similar to metal detector. The manufacturer has to give the right settings. I have seen metal X-ray machines which are great, very highly sophisticated models, cover so many different things, the stones, the fibers,
Mm,
but is this really getting you what you want based on your product? If your product is a jar, glass jar, or you have product with the dense like a piece of ham. So we like, again, the best way to do is to actually work in conjunction with the manufacturer and get the worst case scenario by playing with this, by introducing something that you really will find in your product based on your customer complaints or your internal non-conformance findings. What you found in there, which was not, which should have been caught by X-ray, but it was not caught by X-ray. What's wrong with that?
right. You mentioned glass products, or we'll say physical, like food packaging products. So we had a couple questions here from Sarah. This probably referenced what you were saying around resources for verification. So she's asking, can you provide examples of how to find information on physical, like glass, and chemical hazards, and how to validate and verify that crucial limits are being met?
In the like for the physical hazards, there is some reference in the FDA, which is a bad bug handbook. It should
Mm,
cover most of the information. Um, this question is pretty much like it needs a little bit more information on that because there's it's based on the product. What are you making? What are the different known hazards that you have? And we can always have either the guidance documents or industry best practices. In the tag, we have people who are specialized in that. So I'm not
right.
sure if I can answer all of that in this panel, but definitely we can help on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We could definitely follow up with you, Sarah, on that, because her second question was around, hey, what other guidelines from the government, and you just mentioned one from the FDA, are there for food packagers like bottling liquids? So we can definitely follow up with you on that one. Good. All right, we got a question here from Siva who asks, can you confirm if qualification such as PQ or operational qualification is part of the validation process when making a new product?
Can you repeat what is the qualification she referred?
The example is operational qualification, or PQ. Is that part of the validation process?
I'm not sure about that because validation is always a combination of the industry, scientific research, similar risks analysis, as well as internal process review based on the number of years you are experienced with this product. I
Hmm,
have met somebody with 40 years in a dairy industry, so he will know exactly what it takes to pasteurize the milk. So depend upon validation qualification determined with the experience, with the knowledge, with the science behind it. That's why validation is very open. Like you can hire very good external experts, and you can also use your internal experts who has been working on this product for years, and also the industry knowledge and FDA guidance documents, which covers the starting point of the validation steps.
Okay, so we can maybe follow up with Siva after this with some of those recommendations.
Yeah.
Um, all right, we got another one here. Should we send out finished product for testing to verify that our HACCP is preventing E. coli or other nasty type of bugs?
One of the verification step is product testing. Like you have designed a great HACCP plan with the proper steps of making the product with the best optimal safety by adding the control step. Can be cooking, can be chilling, can be freezing. So yes, so if you know your raw material carries those E. coli and those nasty microorganisms, then you are expecting those microorganisms to be as a kill step to be removed from the product. So yes, in some situations with the verification activities, one of the verification activity can be the product testing. But now just to give you another tip here, how many products? Like depends,
Mm,
like are you sending like out of 10,000 made, you're sending one product, one piece? What does that mean? So really the part of the verification step is also the design of the verification, like how many packages in the whole 8 hours run you want to do tests, so you have a representable sample, because you may have a different raw material containers used throughout the day. So what you want to achieve here, that's what it is. The design of verification is very important to determine.
yes, absolutely. All right, I got one here from Cotter. I'm gonna do my best to see if I understand this. Is there a way to verify a rare earth magnet used as a process control for metals? Apparently, they monitor before and after the loadout to ensure it's all clean, but how do you verify that?
Magnet can be verified to make sure, okay, we want to see if magnet is effective enough to do the intended verification activity. So magnet pull test is one of the tasks which some industry who use the magnet do, that to make sure that your magnet is pulling enough strength. It's a pull test. They say this is pretty much a procedure where
Hmm,
they will use the pull test mechanism to know whether my earth magnet is still like attracting enough or having enough strength to do the job or not.
right. Oh, that's cool. All
Yeah.
right. All right. I think we are nearing the end here. Let me just double check to see that we didn't get any last questions coming in. I think we're good. All right, Ranjit, we did it. Another FSMA Friday
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
books.
yeah.
Great
I'm
job.
sorry if I couldn't answer all the questions, but we have answers for all if we know a little bit more information about it. But always looking forward to help the industry where we can.
Oh, wait, I just got one more. If everybody could hang on, this one's pretty good. What kind of validation can you apply when there is no kill step? Hmm,
Okay, so then what kind of validation you apply? So your target should be what your final product is to be like, in terms of the finished product is only maybe fresh cut meat. Then you are looking for the shelf life and storage as a validation study on how long it will stay, what is the storage condition will be good for. So it depends what your finished product is promising to the consumer, and what is the safety aspect is introduced to sell it. So this is what will determine your validation
right.
steps.
Good. All right. I'm going to officially wrap it up. Ranjit, I'm giving you a virtual high five. Excellent job. So glad to have you back. Thank you all for attending this amazing session. Happy Friday to you. If you'd like more information around some resources from SafetyChain or the Atchison Group, please go check out our websites. We've got some great materials for you. Also, if you have any other questions, please do send them in. We will get back to you shortly after this presentation. Don't forget, the recording and the slides are coming into your inbox very soon, so keep a lookout. Happy weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.